I was part of a men's group back when I was living in Indianapolis, and this was 4 or 5 years ago now. I was fairly new in my film company and fully on fire with it. And it just blew my mind. Every single other guy in that group was doing a job that paid the bills. Mm-hmm. And like, some of them were flat out miserable. Like every week we'd say, hey, what's the update for this week? Oh, I hate my job. It's this, and that. I'm like, well, then why don't you quit? Yeah. Well, I don't know where else I would go. It pays good,
Right.
I can't afford that. And that stands in, if you're going to spend a third of your day, 5 days a week on something, mm-hmm. you would hope that thing would be something where you could be fully alive with that work. But I know that, you for the first, 8-9 years of your working life were doing something that I guess you liked, but it was long hours and not something you were crazy passionate about. You were in sales, and you said before you got your job in sales that you would never get a job in sales. So I don't want to hear some story about how that was your favorite thing ever.
Yeah. No, gosh, there's an interesting combination between being dutiful and doing what you need to do to pay the bills, and then also still listening to like what God is teaching me through this, because God promises us the cross. If you love me, take up your cross and follow me. But then there's this other side of things where God clearly says that He came to give us the abundant life. So it's like the cross and the abundant life, the cross and the abundant life. And then that's the challenge. So I go back to when I started in sales, which I didn't realize it was a sales job when I started into it, which is how I launched into it, is because I thought it was a telephone service job. And I hated it. Actually, I was dreading going to work every day. And my poor wife, on Sundays, I would stop eating like right after noon, and I usually wouldn't eat dinner. And she's like, what's wrong? And I was like, my stomach is in knots. I have to go back to that job on Monday. And so it was terrible. But what was interesting, I stayed with that job for, it was probably around 9 years. And what happened through it, there were ups and downs where there were many times in the beginning that I hated it. Yet the evidence of circumstance was that is what I needed to be doing at the time. I did have a resume together. I was putting it out to see what other things would come together. God didn't show me another door to go through. So the lesson in that is you've got to be open if there's another door that God's opening up. And at the time, He didn't open up another door. And I think, God, I love the idea of what's the evidence of circumstance? What's happening today? Because I needed to carry the cross enough and not just throw it off because okay, I shouldn't be doing this anymore, until there was a clear another door to open. And in this case, the door that kept opening was staying in the same job. And I went through ups and downs with that job, and actually what that turned, I ended up being the top salesperson at the end of that year that had begun when I got that Give Me market, and then it's I started doing better and better, and I got promoted from there. But I think the lesson in that is there was a lot of both carrying the cross and then saying, Lord, I want my heart to be alive. And there were times where it came alive in that job when I had enough skill to not be freaked out about providing. And then I found out ways that I was helping my customers because I was selling advertising. And there were some big wins where there's some businesses that I helped. And then the business, I would check in on them on the next year and they're like, oh, Michael, we made $30,000 off of that, $5,000 ad that you sold us. I was like, I tried not to look too surprised. I was like, really? Tell me about it. And they give me the backstory so it built my confidence. So there was a real value in sticking it out, but the whole time I had to be listening to say, is this the direction that you want me to go?